Welcome, friends, fire pitters, but particularly patrons of the arts. This is going to be the second installment in my series that I'm doing about where I'm walking you through the 25 books that I have published. And the first installment was about Hobson's Choice, my very first book that came from my master's degree. And what I'm going to be doing today, though, is this is my second book, and this is one. It is a pair. It's the first in a pair of books that were the result of my PhD dissertation. I split those poems up into two books, and this is the first one of them. It's called Ashes Over the Southwest. Like Hobson's Choice, this is a book that is no longer available, like Amazon or what. It's no longer in print. I do have still a small stack of these remaining. But when they're gone, that's it. What I will say is a selection of these poems appears in my new and selected poems book called Karma Crisis. But this book as a whole now is getting a little bit rarer. This was a special book to me, and I've also, by the way, I just kind of wanted to mention up front that I've decided that on these videos here, I don't want to plan it out. I don't want to think ahead of what it is I want to do or what I want to say, because what I'd like is for each book and each experience and each video to almost kind of surprise me, maybe as much as you, as to what comes out of my mouth and what I think and I feel about it. This came out in 2005, which was an unusual time in my life. I was finishing my PhD, had no prospects, knew that I wasn't going to be able to get an academic job because I refused to leave the town where my daughter lived. And so the way academia works, those of you who are in it know what I mean, you cannot get a job after getting a PhD unless you leave the university where you got your PhD, unless there's some kind of weird inbred circumstances that keeps you, where you are. But it's, so I refused to leave, so I had to continue teaching adjunct, and prospects weren't all that great. I didn't know where things were going. And so when this book came out, one of the things that this book resulted in, even though it wasn't like a flash beginning or anything, but there were about 4, 5, 6 or so poems from this book that sort of launched my poetry performing career, because I began reading them in public events and readings at bookstores and things like that. And so I also, by the way, I kind of, a little side note here I wanted to mention. So I'm also bringing you this book from, I am sitting in the corner of what was my bedroom in my parents' house. This was the bedroom that saw me through the later years of high school and all these kinds of things. This was my room. And it's also a room that I'm getting ready to have to let go, because Mom and Dad, it looks like, have made the decision that we are going to have to sell this house after 50 years. We moved into this in early 1970, and it is a heartbreaker for me. It is a heartbreaker for me. So many of the poems in this book were written in this house. I think 1 or 2 of them were written about this house. So it's special for me to be sitting in this corner of my old bedroom, by the way, with a shockingly cool August breeze blowing in through the window, because we had unexpected rains and storms this morning, and I've got the window open, so you can probably hear that wind and breeze that's going on out there. So let me begin. I'm going to read for you the first poem in the book, which has been one of, I would say it's in the top 5 or 10 or so of my most performed, most read poems over time. And so this is the first poem in the book, and it's called Grandma. This is for my grandmother on my dad's side of the family, Grandma Brown. Grandma, boy, come on in out from under that car. It's time for lunch. Awed by her ability with language and still full from breakfast, I thought, who else could do that? Rattle out 5 prepositions in a row without even thinking about it. I watched oil creep down my hand and pondered my study in linguistics. all those textbooks, and Grandma was still a mystery. Like when I was 8, and she took me out to the garden through a banging screen door to show me our supper, all growed up out of God's ground, just ready for the picking. So that was one of the poems that began this part of my life where I realized, hey, maybe poems are a storytelling. Maybe they are a performance event. Maybe my voice and taking this out into the world is the way that we want to go with this. So there's another thing I want to tell you about this particular copy of this book, though, and this is the copy that sits in my dad's bathroom. Because, as I've mentioned before in stories, my dad reads all of my books in rotation. And so the throne of honor, where my dad is concerned, is to wind up on his bathroom shelf. Okay? That's a place of honor in this house. And so this also means the world to me, because we have this beautiful bookmark here, but we also have these little stick-em note markers here of Dad, where he's marked poems, favorites, and things like that. And listen, to me, as a poet, I don't really need any higher praise or honor than what that signifies right there. So what I want to do here quickly is I want to read 2 other poems kind of back to back that were 2 poems that very much launched. Now these were 2 poems that I was also performing from this book, and I would say the first one I'm going to read is one of the most read poems. The second one I'm going to read, it might be one of like the most performed poem of my career as a whole, like one that just keeps resurfacing. The first one, since football season is about to kick off here, the first one is about Sooner football here in Norman, Oklahoma, and I'll read this one for you real quick. The title of the poem is "The Work of Heaven." The Work of Heaven. Sooner football kicks off tomorrow, doubling the size of our little town. Locals and shop owners bustling around like coastal villagers preparing for a hurricane. Crimson and cream flags line streets, windows, and car dealerships, and flap just above the doors of every Dodge Ram dually and battered Datsun in sight. And jubile sounds reveille as God rolls out of bed, cracks his knuckles, and prepares to detail ranks of jittery angels about the coming conflict in the prayers of players, their mothers and grandmothers who will be praying against the mothers and the grandmothers of the players on the opposing team, and how someone must lose, and how heaven must choose, and that it's a dirty business, but it is what we get paid for. So in Norman, Oklahoma, of course, you need a poem that's about God and religion at the same time because, well, that's self-explanatory. The next poem I want to read is a poem that I wrote for my mom, one of my most performed and therefore her least favorite, though I think she has grown to accept it. But I have performed this poem to thousands of smiling and shaking heads of mothers, daughters, sons, fathers, okay? Everybody who's recognizing, who this person was in their life. The title is very simply, Honestly. I'm 38 and a half, and she still packs ice chests and picnic baskets for my road trips, right down to the red and white, checkered napkins, plasticware. And I want to tell her I have money now. I've learned to shop. Don't eat at McDonald's anymore. But I don't because I love her food. Here at the tail end of a PhD, she still follows me to the door of the house I grew up in, forcing Ziploc baggies of frozen bread into my already stuffed hands while telling me how to know when things have gone bad in the fridge. Her face betrays a genuine fear that I'll eat the expired and die. And I want to tell her I've had 20 years of higher ed now. I have finally figured out the whole mold thing, the smell of bad meat and bad people. But I don't, because I need the bread, and I'm pretty sure I ate something a little funky a few days ago. I've already lived longer than Christ did, and I've still got to eat my veggies when I have dinner with her and Dad. And I want to tell her longevity is not one of the hallmarks of my profession. But I don't, because I know I need the fiber. And besides, nothing in the universe can stand up to the sheer force and power of a mother's love. So even though there are several other poems that I love, going back through this book, by the way, was a real eye-opener for me. It kind of made my heart swell to realize that this was 24 books ago, and so early in my career, and just realizing, yeah, this is where it all started. This is where it all started for me, was this book, and the reception to the poems. When I would read them in performance and in public. And so it means a lot to me. Now, the fourth and final poem that I want to read for you, from this particular book. And by the way, I'll just kind of toss out there, the blurbs on the back cover are from Billy Crockett, from Blue Rock Studios, an artist ranch in Texas, a longtime friend, and from R.C. Davis, the director of World Literature Today at the University of Oklahoma, which is yet again another honor. This book is dedicated also towards the front it's dedicated to my daughter, but there's a big acknowledgement also to a key professor in my life, David Gross, who was a real strike point for me, woke me up, introduced me to some of the most extraordinary reading, Walter Benjamin, just so many things that I got from his classes. And so I want to express that gratitude in this video, as well. But there's one other person that this book honors because of this poem that I'm going to read you here, that we lost a few years ago, the incredible Albuquerque poet, Tony Mares, who was a good friend, a dear friend, and a huge inspiration to me. But not only that, he was a huge help to me, really introduced me to New Mexico. It was Tony Mares and Paul White were the two people who really infused me into New Mexico, and they are the reason that I kind of have the career that I have there. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving in the morning for New Mexico because of fully vaxxed and masking performances that I'm going to be doing in Albuquerque and Placitas and Santa Fe. And I'm grateful to have those opportunities. However, I'm watching performances because of COVID and the Delta variant beginning to cancel again. And so things are starting all over again. But this poem is for Tony Mares. It is also a very highly performed poem of mine, just because of the reaction that it gets. And Tony and I had a favorite place that we liked to meet in Santa Fe when he deigned to come to Santa Fe. Tony was from Albuquerque. Albuquerqueans have very mixed emotions about Santa Fe. Tony used to, when Tony and I would be having coffee in Albuquerque after I had done a performance or something and I was about to go up to Santa Fe where I usually stay, Tony would always look at me over the tops of his glasses holding his coffee because he knew I was about to get in my car and head back to Santa Fe, and he'd go, "So, you're heading back to California?" And it was not loving. But in Santa Fe, Tony and I liked to meet at this little restaurant just off the square called The Shed. Now, those of you who are familiar with Santa Fe are probably familiar with the shed because it's a landmark that's just off the plaza there in Santa Fe. And the title of the poem is a part of the poem's sort of quasi-fame or whatever. The title of the poem is Shits in the Shed. Poets, quotation marks here, poets are shits. Tony Marez told me over golden margaritas at the shed. Told me that's what his third wife told him, quite possibly, over margaritas when they first met. This one being the marriage that has worked the best for him. And I thought, well, yeah. I mean, I can't fight her on it. But isn't that what pairing up comes down to? You gotta pick your shit. Choose one and go with it. And I must say that Tony and I were two fine shits that night in the shed. And so it's funny, I come to the end of this. Like I said, I didn't plan anything. I didn't know what I was going to say, didn't know what I was going to do. And I just come to the end of this little reading from this book with a huge smile on my face and such extraordinary memories. And so my deep gratitude to this book is that where I am now and what I do now, I probably owe to the inspiration that came from the performances that I did early in my career from this book right here. So I'm grateful to this book for that. And I'm grateful to you for joining me for this video. Thank you so much. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you at the tail end of this video about something. The lights are going out again. I'm seeing cancellations. I'm seeing people who are too nervous. I'm seeing, there's like, we just can't do this. I had performances booked. I had things, it looked like this fall we were going to get to start traveling and performing again, which is the only way that I sell books. So I'm going to tell you this very simply at the end. First, thank you for being a patron here on Patreon. It means the world to me, and it's helping me more than you can realize. Without the touring career, I don't have an income. So whatever you're doing, I am deeply grateful. Second, if you know someone who would enjoy what it is that I do and would enjoy this and would be willing to be a part of this, please keep in mind there's a giving level as small as $3 a month, which is just buying me a cup of coffee. That's all it is. And but it is the collection. It's the number. It's not how much anyone gives. It is if we could create a community here, that would help me as much as anything. But it also looks like, and number 3 here, it looks like I am going to have to relaunch my commissioned poems aspect of my career. Who knows, it may even result in a 5th book. There's no way to, at this point, there's no way to know. I already have, just having announced it recently on a Fire Pit Sessions video, I already have 4 new commissions and people talking to me about it. And so if you would like to continue helping me in that way as well, the commissioned poems operate on the honor system. It's a donation of any size. I do not care how small, do not care how big it is. But if you have a poem that you want written over a certain topic or maybe for a certain person or whatever that is, you can let me know what that is. We work out the details and I write you a poem dedicated to that person or to you. Your name is on it or whatever it is. So you can join me then in that as well. Thanks for this one though. And we'll try to get back to the 3rd installment of this series, which will be the book Suffer the Little Voices, which was the companion to Ashes Over the Southwest. And I'll be trying to get back to that very soon. Probably that one will come to you from that beautiful house in Santa Fe. See you soon. All right, until next time, namaste, y'all, and keep reading poetry because it's a little bit of sanity in a world gone completely mad. Love you.